Here I will demonstrate that I made a case for this rock pick from ESTWING. Leather version, of course it has seen some use. And this is just a Pioneer radio set that you normally had from the radios from your car. So you just open it up and then you can secure it also again and have a nice case. And what I did is I cut out these parts with a knife and a file. And I think even if you make two more cutouts, you can make a belt loop out of it. So the benefit of this way of constructing it, of course, that also has quite a size, so you could not keep it all in. But also you can still use the hammer, and also when it bounces back, you will not be quite catched by the pickaxe part. Hope this short video helps and gives you a good idea. Have a great day. The ESTWING ROCKPICK HAMMER, an awesome tool that allows you very strong hammering on stone and hard surface, and also a digging point. So nice, as you can see, also a big tool. The thing is, however, if you're hammering like this, you see the pick coming towards you, and that's quite dangerous, of course. So what I made is a case. So this is of a Pioneer radio, and I just cut out parts for the rock hammer. So you can see this is for the shaft, as you can see also around it, and this part is for the hammer bit, which I will demonstrate now for you. So as mentioned, you just place the rock hammer inside, and then you see where the shaft is, there it connects, and then you have a nice case. The benefit of this, you can still hammer it because the hammer part is still exposed. Of course, if you will overstrike, you will get into trouble, but you don't have the trouble that this is hitting something because it's not sharp. The thing, however, I think you can improve upon it a little bit more by adding spacers here so that you can put it on your rope. A belt here, and if you can throw that through it, that would be beneficial as well. So I will do that today. So what do you need? Of course, the case, and you need to make your decision where you make the incisions. You need at least two. So I just use a regular bread knife that is already used for other purposes, as you can see here, a little bit dirty. And that has the benefit that you still have a quite good point. It's not an expensive knife, and you have the serrations to work through. To work through what? The plastics, of course. The thing is, it's a little bit harder than I expected, because this case is quite tough. The danger of doing this is, of course, that you ruin a good case. Which gets me to the next point. Should you do this? Perhaps you should not. Just let it be as it is. I'm just giving you the opinion. If you make two incisions, so here and for example here, you can loop your belt through it. And why did I pick this side instead of the other one? If you look at the holes I made for the hammer, they are more focusing on this side. So here you have a little bit more room. It's hollowed out, of course, as you can see. So the belt can run through at this side. But I'm not going to do it because I think I will ruin a nice case. And because it's quite hard, it will also be harder to do this the right way. This is not the tool for it. I think a Stanley knife, which is a little bit more acute, has an easier way of working through it. And then you can still use the serration of something like this to hacksaw your way around it. But that's my standing at this point. EDC out. Show you again the rock pick and the case that I made now from the side. So you just place the hammer inside. It could not be fully enclosed. That's something perhaps people will ask. But you see, even when the hammer is at the end, you still have the pick standing out. a little bit, 'cause of course I could make a little bit of cutout there, and then if the pick would hit, it would not be deep. But the drawback would be that you still don't have an exposed hammer, which in my opinion is a good thing to have. So I made it the other way around. And this is the end result. Gives it a little bit of wobble, but if you put a little bit of cloth in there, it's not a big deal. Hope you like this video. Have a great day. For the ongoing joining of the rockpick case for the ESTWING rockpick hammer, as you can see it now fully functional. I'm still playing with the idea to make a belt loop. Last time I did not, because I thought it was a little bit too bad to do for this nice case. But I'm leaning towards doing it again. So here again you see already the work that I did. So making a place for this hammer that you still can use the hammerhead, and also the hacksaw work used for the shaft of the pickaxe. But what we are going to do now, put this pickaxe hammer this aside. We make an incision here though that is long enough and wide enough to give way to the belt, and we use an easy way. I said in an earlier video, if you have a standing knife, it's a better way to do it. But even if you are not having that type of tools, I will show you that even a simple bread knife or steak knife like this can be sufficient. So what you do, you will just rock it a little bit to dive the point in, as you can see. So I will demonstrate what I just did. I popped it like this, and then you can just like ice pick grip it, and your goal is of course to make the hole bigger. So it's quite deep in already, as you can see. It went through, the point is through, as you can see, and here you see the other side in. And then oftentimes the serrations can do quite a lot of the job already. So what you did, I just took it out, and I had a little bit of a line going there. It does not need to be completely straight, so don't worry about it if it goes a little bit skew. And then you let the serration slide again in. As you can see here, you're just making a start, and then the serrations, they work like little teeth, and they just hacksaw their way through it every time. Every time when you hear the pop, it just made it a little bit wider and longer, I guess. And of course you could also go like this, but then this is a glass table. The point here will drive through, so this is a safer way to approach it. Hope this demonstrates a little bit more. Let's try to make it a little bit more in scope of the camera. So again, just making it slide. I think what I did was good for you to see it, but the closer you have it to your body, the easier it is to have this popping sound occurring, so that you added an additional layer to the depth of the opening. And of course it also differs if you have very small belts that you use. It doesn't need to be that long. On the other hand, you are rather having to deal with too long a cut than too short, because you can always put a smaller belt to a wider hole, but you can never put a wider belt to a small hole. Of course you can, but then it will be double and it will not be that nice to carry. So I can take off my belt to give you a little bit of an idea. Just my sweatshirt. What I was referring to. So this is the belt. It's the belt width, of course. And if you look at it, you see what we are doing here is to accommodate the belt. And for doing so, I'll try to make the cut completely through both sides. I will also work this side where I began a little bit more to give you a more in-depth belt hole, of course. And as mentioned, there were two ways to approach this. Of course, I could make the belt hole on this side, but I chose to do it on this side. And why is that? As you can see, when it's closed, you still have a little bit of room. Here goes the hammerhead. Hammerhead is approaching this border, but not that. So there was some spare room in which the belt can go. So that's the idea. The other benefit of cutting an additional hole, of course, is that you can also have a little bit more greeting, so that the condensation is not that much of a problem, I hope. But that's a small thing to do, or to consider. It's not your main objective, I think. Once you have the hole cut like this, you can stop. But then, of course, it would be too narrow to work. But you can also use a file to get a little bit more of a friction, which I will do now. So from here there are two routes to go, either by a very small file or a bigger file. They both work. Although both the small file to start and the bigger file can work, you just force it through if you really want to. Of course, it's easy to start with a small thing, because the gasp can be wide, as you can see here, but still it's very narrow, and this has a narrower, more acute tip, as you can see. So what you do is you try to stick it through. It's even quite hard to stick through this small one. Perhaps the cut is not as thick as I thought it was. What you can always do is apply a little bit of pressure so that the faces can be at a different angle, and that way force it through. As you can see, it's now forced through, but you can start working an angle a little bit more. But this is not a very easy task to do. So what I'm doing now is not so much going through it, but widening the opening by just using the file as if it was a saw, like this, with this motion. Try to put it a little bit more into scope, so I can show it like this. So why did I start cutting? I don't know. If I would end up like this, I could have started with the file, of course. Yeah. So that's a little bit of a pity, just demonstrating that you can do it in different ways. If you have a belt that you will constantly attach to this case that I now made for this rock pick of ESTWING, of course, you need a very slim, or the other way around, a very slim gasp could be sufficient, because you will only work it once. But on the other hand, if you want to have an easy access, of course, you want that to have an easy access, so it could be accessible. So then you widen it a little bit, and that's what I'm doing. You saw the cut when we started, and now I'm using the file to try to widen it a little bit more. That's the idea. Now you can also use, of course, the bigger file, putting a little bit more heft and damaging properties to the table, literally the table, because we are working on the table now. Can you imagine that some people are escaping using a file and they work their way through iron imprisonment? They see how tough a little plastic case already can be, which is very. So you can also work the file like this. You can also flip it around, and then you have the round side to the other side. And that way you can give some friction to both sides a little bit more easy. And by doing so, you will have an easier time to widen the area that you are cutting. At least I think so. So the blade still has an easy way finding its way through. Not so much with a file, of course. So oftentimes when you're using improvised tools as I'm doing now, easy tasks, as we are doing now, take a lot of work. But the benefit is of course that you are able to do it with the non-preferred tools, which can give you a little bit of alternative ways around. Could also be frustrating, it depends on your scope in life, I can imagine. But the other thing is that you have a lot more control as compared to power tools, which will cut through it very easily and fast, but are also giving a lot of more damage per second. So if you're wrong, it will be harder to stop the damage, and can be quite peaceful to do it like this. But I'm still contemplating it, whether I should have done it or not. Could very well be that I was better off not doing it, not touching it. And the other thing that I'm thinking about is perhaps you will, what I did, try to keep it away from the other things. But perhaps you're, how do you say it, compromising the strength of the case a little bit more than I hoped I would. Still looking at the belt. Belt will have a very hard time to come through. Still. Also, a little saw or hacksaw could be worth a lot in this scenario. Just getting a thicker cut in. So far, as is demonstrated here, so this is more the hacksaw way, as I mentioned. If you're not having something sticking through because you will not be hitting a table, you can of course exert this method as well. Also, you can do what I do now, and you will cut with the serrations to widen the gap. As you can see, this helps quite a bit. I think this is the far easier way as compared to keeping the files working for you all the time. I'll give you an example of what I just did. As you can see here, this was the serrations. Easy serration, as you can see here. Non-professional, but just serrations cutting through this plastic. So what I try to do now, as you can see, the belt is not only wide, like this, but also has a dimension on this side, and you want to at least match that. And that's what I'm trying to do now. Now cut one part a little bit away. See again what the serration I'm doing. Making a big hole. Quite a big hole. So now you see one side is a lot wider already. See, it could almost can go through, but the other one is not yet. So we do now the opposite direction. Just letting the serrations do the work. So this is also called a little bit the push cut. So you just push, let the blade sink its teeth in and cut through the material. So demonstrate now. And once I'm done with this, I can use the file to just get the rough dimensions out and make it smooth again. And I think that's a far better way to approach this than just doing all the work with the files. Again, some push cuts. And that also demonstrates that you don't need to have that straight line from the beginning, because you can also compensate a lot with what you will do in a later stage. You push cutting all the time. Careful for your fingers. Because the way that serrations are cutting through this hard material can also puncture your fingers, of course, like teeth can do. Now, about knives, these serrations, if you want to have a survival type of knife and you're not resharpening, the serrations will stay a little bit sharp at least, because you still have this additional friction and they cut through harder material. As you can see here, this plastic, but also rope, for example, or leather. This is a nice thing to keep into consideration. Often people think, oh, because it has a serration, it's more of a saw. and of course it can do a little bit of the saw tactics, but they can also be a lot sharper for a lot of other materials. The drawback, if you want to keep your knives razor sharp, and some people want to do that, so you have two type of persons. One type of person wants to have a knife that is sharpened for a long time, and the other type of person wants to have a knife that's on par or very well functioning. A lot of the time I just made a line with the knife, with the back of the knife, to keep the debris a little bit more concentrated. So the benefit of serrations is that they oftentimes keep the edge for a longer time, even with batoning or something like that, because it is concentrated on some points instead of everything. But the drawback is that with serrations they are really hard to sharpen, especially if you don't have all the tools for it. If you have all the tools, it can be quite an easy task, but not easy as compared to just a plain edge of a normal regular knife. But a regular knife could not do this serration cuts as I'm doing now. Could still do push cuts, but would not catch the fabric. That's what it does. Just catch the fabric in one of those teeth, and then you just push it. By pushing it, you are decreasing the material. Just scrape some of the material off every time, and thereby widening the gap that you need until it's done. Once you're hit resistant, you can still use that saw-like motion, of course. Just get the other serrations also into play and cut yourself through. If you want to keep the debris close, don't use the sharp side, but use the back, the spine, to cut through. And there we have it. So far, let's see. Now easily leaves room for your belt. I'm not saying it will be extremely easy, but it is easy enough. So once we did this, now we can use the file to decrease the rough edges, but easier I think to start with the baby file. This will further widen the gap, of course, because you will remove even more material. But the main purpose of doing what I'm doing now is, of course, smoothing the edges. And why is this so important? Because that way you have an easier way in and out, but also less wear on the belt, of course. Which is a good thing. And the sooner you can get the big one in, the sooner you can get to work. It's quite a lot smoother. Let's try it the other way around. I think this is close to the end product of this hole, and now you want to make another one. But of course also leave a little bit of room. Yeah? So if you make the other one, you still will again start with this puncturing part, so you just press the knife in a little bit, and you have a little bit of a point. Same way as with drilling, but the difference is now I opened it. And why did I do that? Otherwise I put a little bit too much strain on the mechanism, and then you will destroy what's holding your case together. So now I'm wiggling back and front again, but now I remember I started doing this with the file. Would be easier maybe even just started with the file, because if I'm going to cut through it and then use the file again, this is a little bit of counterproductive perhaps. So what you see is this what now happening. So the file is a little bit less sharp of course, but still has good properties. And that way, even if you want to switch over to the blade again, you will have a lot easier time, because the file already did the beginning of the work of course. And you made a way where the blade can just slide and cut, slide and cut. I'll pause it now to clean a little bit of the debris that I just put together and make the room a little bit tidier. So back at it again. This hole is quite completed and this one is now starting. As you could perhaps are able to see, I already went through it a little bit with the blade, and now we'll use the file again to add additional girth to the starting point we already had. So I started with a small one, and now I'm using the bigger one as well. What you use with this file in this case is the point. You just use a little bit more as a friction tool. Whereas with the smaller file you have a more acute point, and you get a deeper purchase of course. But because we have to widen it one way or another, you perhaps need a file. But what we try to learn now from the last attempt is I'll be able to push cut a little bit already. It appears to be quite troublesome. It's a pity. The files, there's a small file stream. You can see if you can keep a little bit of sensation on it. It's quite a lot of friction also for your hands. It would be better if you have like a vise to put it in. It will make it a lot easier. As you can see, I just drilled a small hole now through it, which gave it a little bit more of space, which might be sufficient to start doing some push cuts. We will see. And if not, you can still use the sawing motion to widen the gap, I hope. What you do then is you angle it a little bit more towards the side that you want to take material off. but it's quite cumbersome, I must say. I thought the other one was a lot easier. Perhaps what we did then was not so silly after all. Okay, let's see. Better grip, I think. Better grip gives you more power. Try not to stab yourself. Okay, so you can do two things, of course. Either move the blade, like I'm doing now, or move the object over the blade. Same with the file. It's a similar effect. You just need of the friction, of course. I think this is a much better grip and will help to do the work. And now again you see the cuts going through. You can of course scrape them off if you think it's finished, like now, but I'm not finished. Again, using just a serration to cut them off and get back to work again. Thing is, with different tools you can have different angles, which can be beneficial. Especially when you have tools that are small enough to start the work, and the big ones are still sitting on the side. That's a good thing, eh? I just took this file out of its handle, as you can see here. Try to readjust it again. Things happen, huh? Let's go back to the knife again. Just for giggles, looking how big it is. It's almost getting through to the belt. It's really a nice case because it's so tough type of plastic. Such tough, big layered plastic. And perhaps because we did the other one already, we already compromised a little bit with rigidity, and therefore the case is flexing a lot more, which makes it tougher. But yeah, when the going gets tough, the cuff gets going. I think also sometimes those valves think they have an identity crisis, or am I a valve, a rasp, or am I just a glorified pry bar? Huh? It's a tool that can do it all. Huh? Again, getting the debris out, making some lines out of harm's way. It's quite a nasty socket that I made here. So now after a round head top side, try to round it off a little bit more. And the big valve is still too thick to get the real purchase that you need. Because big valve also wide, quite a wide object. What I'm now doing is I try to scrape a little bit with the blade. So again, using the serrations to do the hard work. If you use the valve and combine it with more pressure, because you can push it down, this will be easier, of course. Okay, quite a big hole. Huh? So the belt will be easy to go through in the top and then have a harder time at the bottom. So we have to widen the bottom as well. In retrospect, it's just drilling a hole, one hole, and then cutting another hole and just cutting through it. Multiple holes seem to be the easiest way, I think. And the big guy is able to do his work. big hole. If that doesn't do, I don't know what will. Now the small file again, just around the bottom of. Perhaps the blade first. So there you see the belt through the holes that we made and the other parts with the hammer on it. Oh, it's hard to do with one hand, of course. It can look like that. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake, of course, because it should be like that. And then close. The last part of the ESTWING case saga. I made the case of Pioneer radio front case for this car radio that you can just take off, of course. But now I added a tie wrap. And why is that? I will show you. There's two functions. So first off, you don't hear any rattling noise, or almost no rattling noise anymore. And this case was developed that you still have a striking phase for the hammer. You should not overstrike because then you will destroy the case, of course, but in the rebound you should not be worried about the pike. So if you open the case, it can be like this. That's opening the case. And then you see it's still secured in this tie rib. So even if it falls open, but it does not fall open that easily anymore, because also the tie rib has an extra securing. For example, for this rock pick from ESTWING. But also it gives a little bit more pressure on the inside here, and therefore has a more secure grip. I will demonstrate. So first put the hammer back into place. See, a little bit like that. So this is the way that the hammer could go, or you can place it on the other side to just demonstrate. There's of course a slot. No, it's hard to do. Let's flip the view, and then I will show you in an easier way. So here you see it. I just slide it like it should. See? Now it's in the place for the shaft. Just click it and it's quite secure. So even if you put this on your belt like this, and you can shake it, still not well open, see? But now it opens and still secure in the tie wrap. So even then you can just put it back and click it again and it's completely secured. So there's an extra safety feature, but the other thing is, because that bend also offers a little bit more traction on the insides. It does not fall open that easily, because here on the inside this band will have an effect. And I will also show you how you take it out and in. So you could of course push it over, but then you will damage the leather because it will scrape on this side. But you can also just turn it. I will show you. It's harder to do on this side. And you can just let the hammer release itself and then take it out. And to put it in is very easy. You just hook the pike in and you set. So you can see pretty secure. And also by hammering you don't hear that much of a rattle. So I think this last upgrade has made the finishing touch, and I will now show you some shots that give you more of details. So it's a Pioneer, and this is interesting because also this is often used for geological work, geological hammer. So you see this. You can also put a belt in still. I made this before, so, and with that and the combination of this tie wrap, you have an extra securement, so it will not fall out that easily. It also on the inside it will give some positive pressure, which is good. So this is for putting a belt through. Here you have the striking head, which is exposed, so to crush things, as you can see. Even though it is open on the side, it's still secure because in the middle it is attached, and there you have the shaft of the hammer, the leather part, and of course, let's switch it again. It should be like this. Here you see the ESTWING working hammer. And you can pretty much strike quite a bit and don't have any problems with the rattling noise, and also the pike is safely stored away. Well, I hope this small video series will help you, and perhaps you can make something the same. My purpose was to have an exposed head that you can still use, so even in the case you can still access the hammer, and you could put it on your belt. It should be good protection against the weather. When it's closed, it quite keeps moisture out. Even if there's some moisture in, it can breathe on those sides, and also you can pour it out, of course, and it's very wet. Have a great day, all.